Ramoji Group proudly confers the Award of Excellence in Journalism upon Sri Jaydeep Hardikar. Sri Jaydeep Hardikar's journalism stands out for its truth and humanity. For over 25 years, he has travelled across India's heartland, listening, documenting and bringing forward the lives of the unseen and unheard. Through his distinctive storytelling, he has illuminated rural realities, given dignity to struggle and hope. His pen bridges people and policy, empathy and action. An author, chronicler, mentor and above all a humanist, he inspires generations to see journalism as a service.
Hello and welcome to ETV Bharat. My name is Nisar Dharma. Today we have with us a very special guest, an author, a researcher, an award-winning journalist, Mr. Jaydeep Hardikar. Welcome, Mr. Jaydeep Hardikar.
Thank you, Nisar. Very privileged. It's an honor to be here.
I was going through your work and you have extensively reported on rural India, the agrarian distress. You have even written 2 books about it. So usually we see urban journalism and literature is what is, people are attracted to. So extensively reporting on farmers during these times, what drew you towards rural India?
Well, when I was doing my journalism in '96, my career had bombed. I mean, I was a cricket player, it had bombed, my dreams lay shattered, I failed in my bachelor's. But you see, my upbringing was in a small city called Chandrapur, where all my classmates and batchmates came from rural and agrarian, very small town background. '96, when I was passing out of my postgraduate degree in journalism, one of my faculty members, who was then the PTI bureau chief, Mr. B. Someshwar Rao, I interned with him. While the rest of the batch was interning with newspapers, I decided to intern with PTI because I felt that I am the only one and he'll give me a lot of opportunities, which he did. And in that 1 month, I think he saw something in me where he felt that there's a particular bent in my mind towards a certain kind of journalism. And so while passing out, he gifted me the book of Sainath, P. Sainath. Oh. Everybody loves a good drought. It was fresh out of the print, fresh from the print, and that day, sitting in a small chai ka adda in Nagpur, I read the entire book. I think I was there for 4, 5, 6 hours. I did not move. I was just 20, and I thought this is something that I think is my calling. I didn't know. I mean, I did not have the tools, and then so that was my first really inspiration. And Rao told me that this is a journalism this is real journalism. This is something that you ought to be doing. And so I started following Sainath's work in the Hindu. But my first editor, late Mr. M. Y. Bodankar, who was also my first mentor and guru, he, in my training period, he basically gave me a tool. He said, always remember, you have to answer this question, fundamental question: journalism for whom and journalism why and for whom you are becoming a journalist. So with this background and kind of my early schooling, etc., I think I felt that these are the stories that I should be doing. And I think 6 months down the line, when my editor started giving me early assignments, in the initial period, Isar, you are all running after bylines. But about a couple of years down the line, when I started reporting on, say, the issue of displacement and their rallies, their protests, I realized that purpose in journalism is far more important than any other. It's just an instrumentality. If you discover your purpose, I think the rest of the things fall in place. I had to work hard on my language because I studied in Marathi. That was my primary language. So English doesn't come naturally to me. It's an alien language. I would say it's an acquired language. So then reading, researching and catching up with issues, I think came. And then later on, it so happened that one fine day when Sainath was touring Nagpur for a talk, I somehow managed to catch up with him. And then things, then he took me under his wings. Basically, he was reporting from Andhra Pradesh around '96, '97 when the farm suicides basically started. and I was seeing the same thing in Vidarbha, which is a contiguous cotton region. So I started tracking it with whatever resources or whatever at that point of time, whatever my understanding was, I started to follow that issue and then talk to a multiple level of people, farmers, experts, economists, just to build my understanding of why this is happening. So that is how I began. But my first foray into a serious foray into kind of rural journalism was when I bagged the KK Birla Foundation for Media Fellowship.
Yes.
That 1 year I traveled across the country non-stop for 12 months by buses, by trains, by whatever vehicle I got, and I was astounded to see what happens to people who are displaced by development project. And if you remember, 1990s was a decade when the issue of displacement, rehabilitation was a very hotly discussed and debated subject. So here I was. So that started my journey, a serious foray into these subjects, and it was not some kind of a romanticism I was following. I still am not in that, you know, ivory palace where I am kind of a, see, rural beat did not exist. It started sort of building. I don't go into the countryside as a niche area. It is 833 million plus people. Exactly. It's very eclectic. It's very vast. Multiple states, languages, etc. Good and bad.
It's actually the India there.
That you are right. It's the India. So professionally speaking, I did not find any competition in that kind of a beat. If you want to report, say, politics, let's say BJP, I don't think your editor will simply put you. But here was a beat no one was really interested in. So it kind of, although it was, I thought it is something that interests me passionately, but it was also, professionally speaking, nobody really contested that beat.
For our viewers, we would like to inform that Jaideep is currently a core member and roving reporter with the People's Archive of Rural India. Jaideep, could you throw some light on what PARI or People's Archive of Rural India is, and what is your role there, and what is the work that it does?
PARI is a very ebullient bunch of very young, passionate, committed reporters and editors, completely driven by crowdfunding. It's kind of an alternative media that Sainath envisioned. You see, most of us would crib about our editors. I've worked with 4 different newspapers. And believe me, despite their good intentions, these stories don't really occupy the prominence in the space in which the legacy media operate. And there are reasons for it. I don't deny that there is a reason, commercial reason, there is a whole advertisement driven revenue. Your readers are sitting in urban India, and you tend to believe that they are not interested in these stories. So this cribbing went on forever, and somewhere down the line when Sainath sir received his Magsaysay award, I think at that point of time he had this idea that we should build something of an archive of the countryside about the dying vocations, professions, art forms, etc., etc. And that idea he evolved it into a kind of a digital platform which can be an archive of rural India, but also a living journal. And so from the early phase, from the period of ideation, say way back in 2008-9 to 2014 when PARI was launched, December 20th, 2014, I have been kind of very fortunate to be part of that journey, where we believe that tomorrow's media has to reclaim its preeminent work, not just to inform people, but also to educate. The education part is equally important. But now with digital platforms, you can actually historically, you can actually archive things that may not really be say relevant, say 15, 20, 30 years from now. So it has also a role in archiving,
right,
and bringing education directly to the audiences, to the new audiences. So it's kind of a convergence journalism where we look at the countryside in its holistic sense, the good, the bad, the professions, the vocations, the dying art forms, the culture, even crime, farm crisis, castes, gender, everything.
In fact, talking about that, one of your recent works, the story on Chandrapur and the human-animal conflict there, I see that it has, holistically seen or covered that issue.
Yeah, look, one of the things I am interested in now, see, I'm 50, will be turning about 30 in journalism. Question is, how do we use limited resources? I am independent journalist. With People's Archive of Rural India, that's where my major journalism goes, but I also write columns and other stories from commissioned, editors who commission me. But look, the idea is to use the limited resources in optimal way. And one of the things that I am interested in, as well as the Paris core focus, is how is climate change impacting our life? If we use climate change as an overarching framework for politics, ecology, economy, then the question arises is, how do you report climate change? So one of the things we decided to report it was to look at the ecological changes, which is, ecology is a physical constant. Climate is a very broad process which is very difficult to capture in terms of events. So we decided to look at people, ecology and climate change. Now ecological zones in India are multiple. There are forest zones, there are hills, there are mountains, there are oceans, grasslands, river belts. So I thought I'll start with forest. Now one of the defining stories of India today is it's a deepening problem of ecology, climate and changes, biotic pressures that are changing and are bringing wildlife in contact with human beings.
Exactly.
So my frame there is to look at how is it impacting farming, because farming itself is in a crisis. Now this is a new headache. So that's how I began with Tadoba, and eventually gradually I will fan out in different parts of the country. I started with Tadoba because I understand that region, but I am also trying to study, say, central India, how does the landscape change, northern India. So while I am reporting on this, I am trying to research and study more and more about the north, east, west, south, because this crisis has multiple angles and multiple dimensions. Yeah.
Apart from your journalistic work, you have also written 2 books about rural India. One of them is A Village Awaits Doomsday, and it's about the personal stories of people displaced. Now, in journalism, we are told that you have to be very objective, but when you go to such places, you have to empathize as well. So, how do you balance between empathy and objectivity when you are reporting such stories?
Yeah, one of the finest lessons, 3 lessons that I hold very dear to me is, one came from my first editor, Journalism for Whom and for What. The second came from Sir Mark Tully. He was talking to us. I was a fellow at a fellowship program, and he said, remember, you are merely a storyteller, you are not the story. Always keep this in mind. And the third thing which came from Sainath during our travels is, a question that I had asked him was, why do the editors not see these stories? And then he immediately said, if you don't have a heart, your eyes can't see a story. Meaning, unless you have empathy, empathy is the core of empathy and compassion, I think, to me, are the values that make any individual good or really better. Other things are really, they are important. I mean, the craft of writing, reporting values, etc., etc. But empathy is something that I think has always stayed with me, and I think my upbringing, my mother is very empathetic. I think it's also probably I was raised by a very compassionate and empathetic woman, my mother. So I think all of that helps me.
Right.
I can empathize with people, but I also then try and zoom out sometimes to see what the story is, what is the, and I don't do stories if there is no, I mean, human interest or humans interest humans, that is the bottom line. So unless you really tell a story of a human suffering or a human achievement or a human excellence within the context of the bigger frameworks, empathetically you can't really really be a good writer or a good reporter,
I think empathy also opens up people, and journalistically the piece or the story that you're writing would be more stronger when they open up.
Absolutely.
And they have confidence that they can share this information with you.
Yeah. The thing is, let's say I am interviewing a woman or you are interviewing a woman who has just lost her husband. How difficult it is for that person to speak,
Exactly.
unless you connect at the level of heart, unless she knows, she trusts you that I mean well, right? I mean well, I want to tell the story, something that happened with say Ram Rao, my next book. It took me 2 years to persuade Ram Rao and his daughter to permit me, to give me permission to write about their thing, because look, they are in a nondescript village in Vidarbha, saddled with multiple problems, economic problems, financial difficulties. He has just come out of a very serious attempt of ending his life, and here I am trying to convince them. It's the two different worlds. I have to then find a middle ground where I have to win their trust, but I have to also tell them, look, I am not doing this for myself. I am not wanting a name here or money. This story is important because the world needs to understand a daily life. Stories are important, if you, let's say if you are a development junkie, unless you understand the other side of development, how are you going to come to a middle ground where you say, okay, I don't want this development if it is trampling millions of people. I might take that value position.
Right.
But if I am not telling that story, it's all hunky-dory. It's that beautiful India. Society is not always just beautiful. It has also got grey shades and dark shades. We got to tell those stories as well.
Sir, as reporters, we know that we have to approach a story a certain way, but you have also been a writer. You have written books.
I'm trying to be a writer.
So how different is the storytelling, between a book and writing a news report, for instance, or even, a long form piece? How different is writing a book?
I think a book or a long form story doesn't need merely the 5 W's and 4 W's and 1 H. A narrative writing or a book which I am really fascinated by, and I am really trying to learn that craft more and more, and I think that is my attempt going further, is to tell a story through scenes and sequences. And in non-fiction, it means a lot of careful observation. You can't really deviate from, you cannot fictionalize things. Exactly. You have to write what is unfolding, which means that you have to try and understand the trajectory and be with the story for a very long duration. So here character does something. It's a typical story of a film. There's a character, something happens to that character, there's a complication, and something happens. Either it is a complete resolution, denouement, or like in Ram Rao, I had no conclusion because it's not a fiction. So one day I asked him, do you think you will be able to repay your loans ever? His answer became the end, where he said that, look, old loans will go away, new will come back. Probably I will die in the loans. Now the thing is, it's an inconclusive conclusion, but there is still some answer to that. So in non-fiction, where you use these skills and use the craft of screenplay or a typical literary storytelling to amplify a particular journey or a particular story that is unfolding before you. So in that sense, it is vastly different. Therefore, not every journalistic piece can be a story. It needs any good non-fiction long form thing needs a narrative. It needs all those characters and it needs a journey. So you have to choose, okay, this is what has an actionable thing, because narratives are usually about action or non-action, something happens. So I think in that sense it differs from a typical 1000-word piece. I was bored of that. I mean, this is what he said, she said, and I thought I need to go beyond this, and it's a new genre of slow journalism. Someone, if you're not following, follow a superb journalist called Paul Salopek. He's an American journalist right now tracing the journey of the early humans. Its project is called Out of Eden. Totally flabbergasted by his style of journalism, which he calls slow journalism. Sainath uses a word explanatory form of journalism or we investigate human life, which means that you have to slow down, understand the context and go beyond news and explain what really this means. That is where I think the future of digital journalism lies.
Exactly. Regional journalism, I understand it's not as strong as it should be in India, how it covers. We mostly have a person from a distant corner covering, an urban life or an incident at some other place. But however much it is happening, the regional journalism, do you think it has some role or it is shaping conversations around national policy or especially policies which are related to rural life?
If you look at Indian media, it is pretty much, the national media today is basically the media that is in the 4 metropolitan cities and 2 other wannabe metros. But India is such a vast country, from J&K down south up to Kanyakumari and from east, northeast to say western coast. I can count at least 30-40 major regions that don't feature in any day's story. We've just had Bihar elections. We know of the regions and the political turnouts and the final tally, but do we read stories from Seemanchal? We don't. Do we read stories from northern Karnataka or Hyderabad, Karnataka? We don't. Do we read stories from Marathwada regularly? We don't. Do we read stories from Rayalaseema? We don't. Are there reporters? Yes, there are reporters, but those are beat reporters or the. So I think regional journalism or regions and reporting of the regions is national media, has to be a national media. Something that at pari within our limited resources, we are pretty much national. We report on probably every single agroecological zone in the country. We have some 128. If we look at subcategories, total 128, 150 agroecological zones, we try to report from every zone. So in that sense, I am a regional, I don't count myself as a metro reporter. By choice, I stayed in Nagpur because I am closer to the stories. If you draw 400 kilometers of periphery around me, like circumference around me, I can reach Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, I can reach up to Gujarat, Telangana. So all this region is highly underreported. It's a territory full of tribal life, full of climate issues, forest issues, agrarian distress. It's very, very diverse. So I am not a subaltern voice. I come from a very privileged background from the caste and perspective. But my voice is important because my view is a worm's eye view. It's not a, I don't see India from Delhi or Bombay. I look at India from Nagpur or from the small places and then see how is India shaping up. And if you look at past 20 years of India, all the major stories are happening in the hinterland and heartlands of the country, whether it is cricket, whether it is farm crisis, cultural, Olympic, our new Olympians, politics, every single major story of the country is happening in hinterland and heartlands, and we are not there. I thought it's a great advantage that I am in a small town. I can navigate, I can reach a story faster, I can be in touch with people. And in that sense, I think we now need a media where we have impeccably trained local people who can tell local stories in a global context, not even national, in a global context. But I think our mainstream media is yet to acknowledge that and yet to come to terms with that.
Understand. So can you share an incident or an experience of yours, probably from the previous years, which profoundly impacted your perspective on rural distress? And then
there are countless things. I mean,
one incident that stays with you.
Well, I think it came. The related thing. I think it came from a woman, young girl, actually 23, 24, with 2 children, really young kids, just a 6-month-old baby and a 3-year-old daughter in my region. I was interviewing her and she was crying because her husband had just died by suicide. And she said, look, I can't commit suicide, I can't die because my children are too young. and this society will not allow me to live. I have to make sure that these children grow at least up to 18 years. After that, I can die peacefully. But these, it will take 15, 20 years for them to grow and take reins. So I have to live for them.
Be there for them.
And the society will not allow me to live peacefully till these years, right? So the thing is, agrarian distress is not just economic issues. There are multiple structural spirals that that kind of animate or that kind of inform the life. It's not just some kind of nondescript individual, unnamed individual dying. His whole family, there's a historiography to a village. I'm just coming from Marathwada, where I went to a village called Kari in Dharashiv, which is in Solapur district, where I thought there is only one farmer who had committed suicide, a horticulture farmer, basically a dry land farmer trying to be a horticulturist and risking, like a Russian roulette, risking everything. It turns out that in the last 24 months in the same village, there have been 30 suicides. Why is it driving? What is it driving? So I think I'll need to go back to that village again and again, because in the first or second trip people don't talk. But the question is why? And why is the rest of the village not really bothered about it? Now the thing is, in the same village where I was talking to the woman, there was a young boy. He said, "You are the first person to come," and I said, "Why do you think? Your voices are not heard?" He says, "No. We have a voice. It's the question is we can speak. We want to talk. Question is, are there people to listen?" You know, he explained it in Marathi. His rough translation was that we are not voiceless. We have voice. Question is, are you ready to listen to us? So I think journalism, to me, that profoundly changed me as a journalist also, that our job also is to listen.
Exactly.
I think it makes you more humble, it gets you the story, and then you tell those stories in the most empathetic fashion as much as you can, whatever your craft is like.
Right.
So I am trying to better the craft, because in today's cacophonic world of social media, my stories don't stand that much a chance to be read. So the thing is, how do you compete with a world wide web where millions of lots of information and content is available at your
minute-to-minute updates that
true
cycle there. While you have explored themes of migration, inequality, and resilience, which one of these three do you think is feels most urgent?
I think they're all interlinked, because climate in Marathwada, for instance, Marathwada migration has a link with climate or climatic aberrations or climate change. Now it has also got a link with inequality. The process is driven by these gigantic new tariff war, for instance. Trump has imposed tariffs. There is a war going on between the world's most developed countries. How does it impact a small soybean farmer in Latur?
Right.
So he is facing a downward spiral in prices. Prices are not going up. Then this year has been the most incessant rainfall year. He has lost his crop. So there is climate impacting him, and there is a market which is now influenced by domestic and international prices. And here is a guy sitting there who has no comprehension of both the processes. So we got to somehow explain it to both the policy makers and those who are kind of suffering the malaise of the distress. So I think there is no you cannot pinpoint one particular issue. I think they are all interlinked: climate, distress, even good innovative practices or people coming together to respond to that. I also see that happening. So all that I think is interlinked and therefore very complex. We got to understand that the complexity of the issue makes the storytelling that much more difficult, but also more profoundly educational.
Right. Talking of innovation, there's an AI boom these days, and there are AI-driven agricultural practices like modified seeds, genetically modified seeds. What's your viewpoint on it?
See, I'll quote Professor M.S. Swaminathan, the preeminent scientist of India, who says that technology is class agnostic. It has its implications. The question is, do we use appropriate technology? I believe that AI or a new technology cannot be an answer. It's not a one-fit-all solutions or a one pill that can resolve all the issues. If the technology or is not appropriate, let's say AI, you are driving AI in a region which doesn't have basic internet adaptability or basic internet coverage, I doubt whether it will impact. But it might, AI and digital innovations in land and agriculture will lead to digital inequality. There will be farmers, just as we saw in Green Revolution. You had a set of farmers who were benefited by Green Revolution before they began to erode, their soils began to erode. But there was also a vast amount of lands which remained rain-fed and could not really, economically flourish in that period of 70s and 80s. But same thing might happen in the countryside today, where digital connectivity might lead to better information system or supply chains rather than those areas and those people who have no education in that thing. So I can see that digital divide will be a new factor in the next 2-3 years itself. It already is, but it's going to accentuate, it's going to sort of accelerate that division, that divide.
Adding to that, if I ask, how do you see rural India evolving in the next, let's say, 1 decade?
If the business as usual, it continues, I'm seeing massive out-migration from many regions. I don't see people, particularly young people, wanting to stick to the countryside. So there will be regions which will be draining. I don't see, unless rural India does well ecologically, economically, I don't see India prospering to a level. I think it will be a very skewed growth, as it already is. If the average annual income of a farmer is, say, some 20,000-30,000 rupees, I can't foresee a country which will be a developed country in the next 50 years. So we have to start thinking about collectively of what all is needed. We need a one generational change, because every time you go into a village, you don't see young people. There is a social malaise now. All this crisis 30 years down the line, it's been 30 years that we have seen the countryside in stagflation, particularly in the rain-fed and smallholder farmer agriculture. Now their children are not able to marry. Young boys, I see this into a major social crisis in 5 years' time. Young men unable to find brides for themselves, even from the landed upper caste backgrounds in the countryside. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who are unmarried at 35, 36. In the countryside, usually the marriage age is 23, 24, 27 for boys. It's not happening. It's snowballing into a social problem now. And we need more reporters, we need careful policy, no sudden shocks in terms of what kind of policy the government suddenly changes. I can think of demonetization, it wrecked the countryside, or Trump's tariffs wrecking the countryside. We need long-term policy stability and states' involvement beyond the doles, 1500 rupees de diya, 2000 rupees de diya. It's easier it gets you political capital, but it ruins the long-term reconstruction of the countryside. That is what I think.
Right. So being a seasoned journalist who has covered rural India, what advice would you give to young journalists who want to enter this, rural reporting?
See, rural reporting is a laborious but highly educational thing. I welcome students. These days I go and teach at a private university. I teach a course leveraging from my field work, and I tell them you have to have your field. unless a journalist sticks to his field, how will you grow as a reporter or a citizen, or how would you educate yourself? Even if you are reporting, say, crime, get the human stories beyond those criminal things. So for the rural reporters, I think this may come more naturally to people who are in smaller towns or in the smaller district areas.
Right.
I think they can look at reporting the rural as a serious beat, because you know, here you can report economy, politics, culture, process, art, many things can be reported in the countryside. You just have to pick your choice, your area of interest, and then explore. I think there will be less competition.
Right, sir. So as we conclude this conversation, what does the Ramoji Award of Excellence mean to you?
So this award actually comes at a time when I have been thinking of repurposing my journalism, you know, in terms of like, okay, I have done this, maybe if I am fit and I want to be reporting, what are the priority areas that I should be focusing on? So there has been a lot of thinking going on, but a lot of lack of motivation or lack of, I don't know what should I have been pretty low. So this comes out of the blue, and I have no words to express my sort of deep gratitude to the jury, to the group. You know, it means a lot, and I think it's sort of it has come at a time when it's kind of it is stamped that, okay, whatever I have been doing, somebody is tracking. It doesn't really. So that motivation or that boost or that moral support will go a very long way. So I am deeply indebted to the Ramoji Group, and I would like to also mention that it is in the legacy of a person who created regional journalism.
Exactly.
That makes me all the more happy, because my argument has been, you know, Delhi is not India. India is slightly bigger than Lutyens, right? There are variations in regional journalism. That is what makes journalism thrive. Language journalism has to thrive. You know, English has to thrive, and it comes in the memory of late Shri Ramoji Rao, who I think probably among the pioneers of regional journalism, that to regional television journalism, also print. That makes me very happy. So that's it. I think this award it's going to stay with me for a very long time.
Congratulations.
And I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, congratulations. We are also proud of having you here. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jaideep.
Thank you very much. Very honored to be here.